let's jump right in. All right, good. The future of
Uh,
Parallax.
Hello, Tom. The future of the Parallax multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Um,
yeah,
well, the future of the Parallax multiverse is going to be magnificent, is it not?
of course.
Of
We're
course.
here. We are here to bend the reality. No, but we thought we talk about, upcoming projects and ideas that we have because, I always feel that we have to spice things up every now and then to
Yeah,
grow and go beyond. And so,
yeah, and
because, hmm?
maybe you want to talk about your thing with Brendan with metamodernism, because I still don't know what the fuck metamodernism is,
Right.
but I know we're going to teach a course on metamodernism.
No, it's like, okay, so we have courses, right?
Of courses on metamodernism.
And no,
Yeah.
no, no. And what we do, what we want to do next year is to, build on that and make more courses. So we had some couple of courses with Layman. Now there's a course coming up with Brendan Dempsey
Yeah.
and on meta modern spirituality. And then you have a course coming up in February, right?
Yes, I do. It's going to be a deep dive into magic and mysticism,
Right.
East and West, because I'm trained in the Vajrayana system of meditation, but I also am doing a deep dive into Western sort of ceremonial magic, Jewish and Jewish Kabbalah,
Right.
um, all of this. Like I know that we know very well the Greek traditions in the West. They're sort of more overt. We know about logos, mythos, and pathos, but we don't necessarily know about Gavora, and we don't necessarily know about Tiferet, and we don't necessarily know about the Sphirot, and we don't necessarily know about the 22 paths of the Kabbalah, and we don't necessarily know about this whole incredible sort of system of correspondences and magic and mysticism, which has always existed in the occult, in the hidden. I mean, occult in the sense of hidden, not in the sense of, you know, um, fucking goats or anything like that. Just in the sense of things being hidden. So there's this whole hidden world, East and West, of symbolic language, mystical language, practical magic that is utterly unknown to the reductionist scientific materialists, and even in the spiritual realm, which is very dry and tends to be sort of like Zen and mindfulness. All of this very dry technical stuff, which appeals to sort of rational mind that wants to systematize everything and put it in a coherent scientific mode, trying to reduce everything to meditation apps and all that. So I want to go in like the opposite direction, and I'm going to do sort of a survey course on that.
Nice. Okay. And so, but it's like comparative religion, or what is that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go through, let's say, I'm going to go through. I'm going to compare the Eastern tantric symbolism and practices with the Western
Yeah,
hidden occult practices,
right.
and then also I'm going to look at sort of a bit like the Book of Genesis and Christian Hermeticism a bit. So it's going to be a big, broad, but also practical course. We're
Yeah,
going to do exercises and practices and things like that in the course.
yeah,
It's not just going to be information.
yeah. No, I mean, like we have this rebuilding spirituality curriculum. No, and so
Mm.
everything we do with the course is like trying to shed a different light on the traditions and on spirituality, and maybe see new ways on how to deal with it. No, I mean that was the approach from Layman, and this will be also the approach from Brandon and your approach too. And so I think you know that's what we are kind of doing.
Yeah, because I think there's this word that John Vervaeke talks about, he says there's the meaning crisis. There's this incredible, and what I consider that to be is an incredible gap, a phenomenological gap in our experiences. In other words, in our experience of life, and then how to work with those just basic experiences of life.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that people don't really understand. Well, people have become so utterly banal in their understanding of what life is, and lacking in any kind of spiritual praxis.
Right.
The people are living in this, and therefore they become victims of whatever meme or ideology or parasitical structure that attacks them from the internet. We're going to have to learn to work with the mind.
Yeah.
Mind training, meditation, visualizations, practices, yoga. The whole thing it's all out there, but often it's out there in this very disembodied technical sense. And people don't have a basic ground. Like, my wife was invited to this new age soiree where they were doing, channeling and all of this sort of nonsense, right? Which is, there might be even some truth in the nonsense, right? But there's a lack of understanding of what's going on. People do that kind of new age channeling, pseudo, wacky tarot, because there's nothing else except for this dry, reductionist, materialistic, scientific, media generated reality. So we have wackiness on one end and reductionism on the other.
Right.
And so we have to have an intelligent approach to spirituality, and we have to realize its historical depth and how empirical all of these psychic researchers have been in the past, and that spirituality didn't start in the 1960s.
Yeah.
We have to go back to the Renaissance, and incredible books like the Zohar, which is this incredible Jewish mystical text that nobody understands because it's so strange. And then things like that, which are in the culture, hidden in the culture, and that people don't know about or understand the significance of.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So I want to explore. I want to take a deep dive into that.
It's
stuff.
interesting because it's like parallel to that. I'm working on a series exploring kind of the philosophy and the principles behind this Western system of magic. But I don't want to be. It's like this superficial, esoteric kind of thing, which you just mentioned, the absurd. But it's like, okay, so what are the core principles that are kind of working behind the scenes over the last millennia, let's say, and while shedding all the external brimborium, what are the core principles of ritual, let's say?
Brimborium, that's quite a word.
Yeah, isn't that an English word? Or
I don't know that word. I've never heard it before.
Right. Maybe it's just
You mean this sort of excess, this esoteric kind of garbage?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So because it's like there are some principles at work why magic kind of works and is interesting, but it's more, these are more principles of the psyche, right? And if you are able to deal with these core principles which are part of the psyche, then you can do a ritual that kind of does its trick without being like confined to the idea that you have to set up a temple and have all these kind of weird things, as you said, fuck goats, to
we don't need to fuck goats. We're not going to do that.
No.
You can do that in your own time.
Yeah. No, but that's and so there are some, and so I was just writing, for example, this thing, this introduction for the first episode I will do, and that's I was like, so what are the core ideas of the West, of humanity, that magic kind of draws upon? And so you have the idea of, well, we are not really content of, we're always kind of striving, and we had this topic come up again and again in our conversations, that the West is kind of a phallic kind of culture, and we always need like this vertical tension in order to strive towards something, and that's a mimetic drive we have. So it's so ingrained, and what Nietzsche said was that with the fall of God, we are always striving towards the Übermensch. It was not a vision that we have, about the future to come, but something that is already there. We're striving to become better people, like with greater complexity, and we're becoming, we want to become more well-rounded personality, and we want to transcend ourselves, and that is such a deep drive that we all have within ourselves, right? And so that's like, and that is what magic kind of draws upon this specific drive. It's not about sitting under the Bodhi tree for hours, because that's not the climate that we have in the West and in the UK or whatever. No, you have kind of integrate the action.
Well, we've talked about it in the past, and I'm not in full agreement with that. Because I think human beings are the same everywhere. It may be true that the West tends towards expansionism, obviously, like, they like to climb mountains. Yeah. Whereas the cliche of the East would be go into a cave and meditate. But I think we can do both. I think we should do both. I don't think we should say, oh yeah, we're Westerners, so therefore we should be this phallic expansionist mentality. I think the East is coming West and the West is coming East. Sure, so I think that what the people in the West need is to go into a cave a bit. In other words, in order to learn how to learn about themselves before they spread their seed everywhere else.
Oh no, it's not about
metaphorically speaking. And then whereas the Eastern people have this tendency towards emptiness. In the Far East, they have this tendency towards life-denying emptiness, and they need to perhaps become more of what you're talking about here. So I think the East and the West divide is a somewhat cultural one, but I think there's something below culture or prior to culture, or more important than culture, which is primordial. So you're looking at it from a psychological, sociological, archetypal level. From a mystical level, I think it's a universal process.
Well, actually, Sloterdijk says it's a universal thing. The vertical tension that you have to strive towards. But what we had in the West is a kind of enlightenment, a secular enlightenment that led to industrialization and all that modernity, and so and that led, and this is partly due to a certain mentality that's connected to geography and climate and everything. And I really think that salvation, also in a spiritual sense, at least for us in the West, is an embrace of the phallic and the will and the striving. That doesn't mean that you don't have to, you shouldn't go into the cave and meditate. But it's like it's what I mean is like an embrace of a certain striving principle.
You think that would be untrue in the East, or like why do we have to divide the East into the West? This is why I keep questioning that. As I think the Silk Road went all the way from the East to the West, and that we're the same. We're the same everywhere. I think the masculine force needs to express, expansion, and then the Gavora is contraction, and we need to go back and forth between expansion and contraction.
Because I'm not talking about in this series about the East, but I'm talking about the Western system of magic, and so that's why I'm focusing.
Which was very, very informed by the East, by the East as well, is more than you would think, especially Crowley, who went all the way to Tibet. Anyway, that's just maybe our argument here. We can agree to disagree, but I think the primordial thing is self-similar across scale.
Yeah, I still, I mean, I think I like it that, but I think there's a misunderstanding. Um,
Mhm.
because I'm not saying that you're wrong, right? I know
Yeah. Mhm.
there's an interchanging of ideas and narratives and perspectives between East and West because they're like universal experiences, right? But I also think that, you know, every culture brings forth a certain, you know, mimetic kind of initiatory systems that apply to that kind of geography and climate. You know, it's like, it's, you know, there's a reason why we don't have like one religion. It's like the Buddhist and the Hindu kind of initiatory system is, you know, tightly fitted and adapted to that culture and climate. And so the same goes for Protestantism and Catholicism, and magic and alchemy. It's like so integrally kind of connected to, you know, Europe in a kind of sense. For
Mhm.
because like the mentality is different. That doesn't mean that the experiences that are made through these initiatory systems that they are different. I think they're the same, but
Mhm.
there's a different kind of mentality to these kinds of things. You know, the
Mhm.
color of the systems of initiation are kind of different.
Mhm. Well, maybe a way in which I could agree with you would be that the West is lacking a certain phallic quality at the moment.
Right,
So that in that sense, that's a way in which I could that it needs to get that back.
right,
So that's a way in which I would agree with you.
right. And
But I don't
so,
think there's anything special about the geography that's different from, there's mountains in Tibet and there's mountains in the east. I mean,
well, but if you look
mountains
at,
and valleys and there's phallic religions in India, like Shiva religions, and there's the more feminine styles of religion, valley religions, valleys and mountain religions.
yeah, well, but you have to agree to the fact that cultures are different, right? Why are they different? Because they have a different history, they're embedded in a different climate, embedded in a different geography.
And there's
It all
differences within cultures. So there's also more phallic Western religions and more
there wouldn't
matrical.
there's a difference between the German mentality and the Indian mentality. It just looks like that. There's even a difference between German mentality and Spanish mentality, right?
Oh, certainly, yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's what I mean. And
yeah,
and so
yeah,
and so every it's like when you are in Spain there, or even here in Mallorca, you have like this very old Catholic kind of rituals that kind of still click and fit. And so you have like every spring and every autumn, you have like this huge processions with these guys with these big Catholic kind of Ku Klux Klan kind of hats, and they're like
yeah,
everything. The whole city is silent, and you hear like only this.
mhm,
And so they're walking like the whole city walks like the whole city has like different kinds of churches, you know, like what's the word, denominations. And so they're all walking with a big cross and with these masks, and everything is like very very grave and deep. And it's like,
yeah.
and so you could never do that in the north of Germany. You know, that wouldn't make any sense. But here it kind of makes sense, right? And
I
so,
suppose, but you also have people practicing people. You have Hindus in Germany, you have Buddhists in
but
Germany, you
that's
have
not the point, is it?
Christians in Korea. You know, we're in
Yeah,
a
but,
world culture right now, so
yeah,
the
but if you
indigenous
want,
religion of Germany has been completely lost. Pretty much, it was like pagan at one point, and like I think that we don't know that much about but the indigenous religion of Germany. And we know that Protestantism is a in the West was a sort of phallic religion, which didn't have a feminine counterpart, and therefore became completely pathological.
I get what you're saying, but the point
So I think like, but what is before Protestantism in Germany? What were the traditions before that?
But
All
Andrew,
kinds of stuff.
the point I'm trying to make is if you want to look at the Spanish, at this kind of ritual they have here, you know, the way they enact Catholicism here.
Yeah.
You look at Spain, you don't look at Germany. Because in the north of Germany, there's Protestantism.
Well, you look at Catholicism.
You look at the Spanish way of doing it. You know, if you want to look at this kind of ritual, you don't go to Germany, you go to Spain, because it's grown here in that kind of way. You know?
Yeah, sure, it has its unique qualities of being Spanish, but you could find analogous things in other places. Which
no, but you can't find that in northern part of Germany. You can't.
Yeah.
Can't find that ritual in northern part of Germany. It's not there. There are different rituals, maybe with the same thing, but these kind of Catholic rituals are only found. So, and that's all what I mean. You have to. So every culture brings forth their way of kind of enacting religiosity or spirituality, or
yes,
and that's all what I mean. And so
no, but you were saying that the West, which is a big, you know, you were making a generalization about the West, you know.
No, I was making.
And this is where I was criticizing, saying the West is like, it has this phallic quality, this sort of like, you know, and then the East. So I was criticizing this sort of because the West is a lot of things, and it has a lot of.
I'm not talking about the West. I'm talking about magic as a system which is kind of grown out of the Western hemisphere. It's like, yeah, it has different things coming from outside, but the system is kind of European magic, right?
With very Indian influences and
it has influences,
all kinds of. So again, if you're making it Western, and also, you know, and also there's very similar types of schools that you could find, you know, in India to these Western esoteric schools. You know, basing, I guess it's the Christian versus it's the Christian influence which differentiates it.
You don't go to South Africa to study magic, in this way.
You mean Crawley style ceremonial magic?
The Western esotericism that has like this millennia old tradition starting from alchemy to our age, right? That is kind of homegrown. You don't go to South Africa to study that. You would go.
No, but Vajrayana means Rasi, which means the school of alchemy, which you can find in India, which works with the elements and works, you know, all the same kind of principles.
Yeah, but you go to the libraries in Paris to find the documents and to read up on what these systems are. You don't find them in South Africa. That's all what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right? And you go to the libraries in Edinburgh or in London or you know, to find, you know, the heritage and, you know, the documents and, you know, if you want to learn about these systems.
Yeah, well, I guess you're talking about the Western Hermetic traditions. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
That's all what I'm saying. And so it's like, of course there is like influences, and I get that, and I'm not debating that. You know, it's like, especially if you look at Crowley, it's like his book, what it's called, Magic and Theory and Practice, is at least half is Eastern influence, right?
Yes.
So I get that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So anyway, why don't you tell us more about your course then? I'm sorry to be argumentative.
No. It's good. No, it's not a course. It's just it's an audio series. Right. What I want to do is to, from a philosophical and psychological point, to see, to get rid of all these esoteric, occult brimborium kind of concepts, you know, so you have to invoke ghosts or whatever, or angels or demons or whatever, but to look at the psychological principles. So what are you actually doing when you are when you're doing something, when you're meditating? What are you doing when you're doing a ritual? What is it? What is the trick that you do in your mind? Right? Because like now we have like psychology and your voice dialogue, and you can talk to your inner critic or your inner mother, or the archetype of the benevolent father, which would be like Jupiter, but you don't need a temple, an altar to invoke Jupiter with kind of incense. You just have to know what you're doing with your mind, and that's kind of the argument, right?
I'm with you with that. Totally. I think my angle in this course is the mysticism, psychological.
Yeah.
But I think that like I learned from this Kabbalistic teacher David Cohen Smith, is that the first part of the process of a meditation, right, is like understand the intellectual view, have a good intellectual view, right? You know, what are you doing here?
Right.
Why are you doing it?
Right.
And then that's the basis. So you have to have a good intellectual view if you're going to dive into this stuff, because otherwise you're going to fuck up and get into all kinds of weirdness.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's important. Intellectual view, basis. And then the next part is you do the ontological practices. You go deep into these practices, which can be as elaborate as you want. I mean, you can get into all this bizarre correspondences stuff, and you know, you could go very elaborate there, and you know, which I think you could get lost in over elaboration, you know, and getting into all this spirits and all this sort of stuff. Like you get very lost in this correspondences and elaborations and going too deep into that, especially if you don't have a good basis in the intellectual understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because then you're just you're prey to your biases and your prejudices and wishful thinking, and you get possessed by all these sort of imaginary spirits that maybe you're even creating in your own psyche.
Yeah.
So the first is the intellectual basis. Second is the ontological experience. And then also there's a sense in the last part of these practices, you kind of dissolve the whole thing, and you just, you just sit in meditation.
Right.
What they would call resting in the nature of unborn awareness.
Right.
So that's kind of that structure is kind of, I think, a good way to approach it.
Yeah.
If you're going to get into mysticism and esotericism and even the occult and that kind of thing, why are you doing it? What is it? You know, what is your view? What is your basic view of reality?
Right.
And if you don't know what that is, then you're lost from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I think I'm sorry. You know, the conceptions of, let's say, magic that we have, they are at least like 150 years old, and since then a lot of stuff has happened, like in philosophy and psychology and so on. And so what one of my arguments is that as a system, as Western Hermeticism is kind of developing, and you know, when you look 1,000 years in the past, the people were actually trying to make gold out of lead. Yeah. Because at their understanding, if they do that, they purify their self or their soul. So there was like a conception that the act of transforming a metal actually would transform yourself. But this is, of course, something that is preposterous. It's you know, you have to relocate the process within yourself, right? And so then,
so the gold is enlightenment. It's not, or
right.
It's right. Not an actual substance. Well, and right. I think the best alchemists understood that it was a metaphorical process, spiritual practice they were doing. And then then the other alchemists were kind of like charlatans, right?
Right. But the idea is that over the last 1,000 years, this system kind of developed towards greater integration. You don't need to invoke the spirits, but you can talk to your inner voices, let's say. That's a relocation, an integration of process. And referring to what you just said, it's like the critical thinking. You can describe a lot of what the system is about in modern terms. You can say, okay, it's about not that the emotions have you are in control of your emotional life. It's not that, you are a slave to the memes or even the worldviews, but you can have them. You are like, kind of in charge, and through the system you can learn to be in charge of your inner life. It's like you're not possessed by some weird things that are going on in our culture, but you kind of can play with all the narratives and perspectives, but therefore it's still an initiatory system, because through meditation and ritual you can kind of learn to be playful about this.
Yeah, you can be totally playful, which means I don't think you even need to throw away all the gods and ghosts and all that if you want to go there, as long as you understand they're empty,
Right.
that it's a playful process.
Right.
So it doesn't, people don't relate to that sort of thing. Like, again, in my own practices, there's something called deity yoga, and you identify with the deity, but the deity is your own perception. It's not some external being.
Right.
So the deity you might personify the deity in some kind of a way, and it might be related to the elements or related to a certain configuration of the psyche, but it's not a thing in itself. It's not a platonic ideal. It's not something that's out there. It's just a mode of working through reality. So it's like when you go to a movie, you kind of believe in the movie fully while you're in the movie, but the movie's not. We wouldn't say the movie is ultimately real. So that's why it's important to have the view, because if you start to think this is ultimately real, these kind of things, then you're lost. But if you understand that deity is perception, then it's fine that you can work with Vajrayogini or Tara or Shiva or Shakti or any of these traditional modes, because they have a certain quality and resonance. But I think it's fully creative and artistic. It's not real in any scientific sense, and nor was it ever supposed to be. Yeah, and on the other hand, you're not real either. So this is the radical point, right? It's like, okay, you don't believe in this, but you believe in you.
Yeah.
And that you is also some sort of fabrication and construction. And so what if Vajrayogini is just as real as your psychosomatic image of yourself?
Very true.
So this is why I don't want to throw out the I don't want to pretend. I don't want to be pseudoscientific and pretend that, well, okay, we're much more rational and scientific now. We don't have to believe in these deities, because now we understand, because we understand psychology. No, I think science is one thing, and then religious mythopedic practices are another.
Right. I mean, it's like there is an archetypal charge to, let's say, Jupiter, right? So when you open yourself to that kind of voice, there is a certain experience and perspective attached to it that goes beyond your normal way of moving through and with the world.
Yes, transpersonal.
So, yeah, I don't know if it's actually transpersonal or if it's pre-personal, because it's like there is an archetypal charge. It's like it's such a weird experience, So it's like, okay, you are the archetypal father of all fathers. That's a very weird feeling if you open yourself up to this, to the core idea of being the all father. That's a weird state, meditative state to be in, right? But it's so interesting that what you say is like, yeah, that's just one charge, and then you go with your personal charge through the world. But this is also just kind of, it's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah. Like you believe in your own psychosomatic psyche, personality, body itself. You believe that's real. You're so full of belief in that
Yeah.
It's no different than a fundamentalist Christian believing that Jesus is real.
Right.
It's just as true.
Yeah.
This would upset scientists because scientists really believe that there's atoms and and you're made of atoms and the atoms are real and that they're we could but even those are just images of something
Yeah.
that we've discovered through correspondences.
Yeah.
Like
I
the
mean, this,
picture of the atom is not that's not what an atom is. It's just a picture of an atom,
sure.
there's no such thing as this circle with little things coming out of it. That's a representation.
Yeah. I mean, I
um,
always love this, and this is why I love this work with Parallax, because it's like there's this intersection between philosophy and psychology and spirituality. It's like, and
mhm.
it's like kind of I'm what I like is to drift in that kind of and tilt in the direction, because it's not just philosophy or not just
Yes.
psychology, not so it all informs itself. And so it's like what we're doing with the courses and what yours going to do with the course, or the series that I'm doing or whatever. It's like it's always like kind of starts from that very point, where these three kinds of domains of human experience kind of inform each other and enable us in this case to try to find a different view on this whole thing. You get what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like,
totally. Well,
because
there's a psychological. It's what I was describing. The philosophical is how you articulate the process, and the psychological is how you experience it, and then the spiritual is like, okay, that's beyond both of those things.
yeah.
And you're into the realm of the spiritual. It's just pure spirit, or
Yeah, and I like the interplay, because I don't want, let's say, I don't want Parallax to be just a spiritual side. That's
yeah,
not what it is, because then there's no corrective.
yeah,
Then we're so. But we need the philosophical and the psychological in order to have this kind of work model.
yeah. So people don't fall prey to going to see people who are talking about channeling and
Right.
wacky and using tarot cards and you know even though we can you still study some of that some of the phenomenon
Yeah.
without sort of making it reifying and making it totally real. Like, yeah, I guess what you're saying is like we go to extremes when we have a monological view of reality.
Right.
Are we so if we're just in the philosophical realm, I mean philosophical in maybe the more popular cultural sense of philosophy is like just ideas. If
Yeah.
we're just in that realm, then we tend to sort of be dismissive of the ontological,
Right.
right? And if we're just in the emotion or the psychological, if we're just in the psychological emotional realm, we're dismissive of the of the philosophical. And that you find that everywhere in people who do spiritual practice, they say don't think and just be and all this kind of bullshit. And then if we're just in the realm of the spiritual, then we just throw the whole thing out the window and just sit
Right.
in zazen, 16 hours a day, which is what I did in my 20s, not knowing why I was doing it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, even if you just look at psychology, so the danger is always that you start to look at the world through a lens of trauma and
Mm,
neurosis and all of
yes.
these things. But it's like, oh yeah, that's maybe one application, but psychology is it has to be balanced by philosophy and spirituality, and then you get a whole systems approach.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
A whole systems approach, um, which is also for it to be creative, then you also have to uh, throw away the system too.
Right.
Burn, put the system in the sacrificial fire, and then arrive at something new, so that you keep this dynamic creativity alive.
Yeah. No, but it's always
caught in the system. You know the way Wilbur fans get caught in this whole system, and they can't stop seeing the world through stages and levels and stages and of colors and which is all very okay. It's like it's okay to use that, but if you don't see the transparency of that, or if you're not willing to throw that into the fire, then it becomes this autistic sort of intellectual totally intellectual thing, which has no actual practical value.
The guy, there's like this relationship matrix, and so it has like two dimensions, like the male stages of development and the female stages of development, which is kind of the same, like orange, green, turquoise, whatever. And so, like, what happens if you are like a red man with a blue woman, or other way around, or green? And
yeah.
So, like, for every stage, for every combination, there's like a possible outcome. It's like, oh no, it's like. It's just there's no no Apollonian.
That's pathological.
No, well, it's in Nietzsche terms.
It is pathological,
No, well, it's but it's also what I want to say. What I told him, it's like if you look from a Nietzschean point of view, it's Apollonian. You have like the whole structure, but it's order,
but it's dead.
But there's no light. There's no Dionysian light coming through. Human relation, especially romantic relationships, they're not Apollonian, they're Dionysian. They are like daring and dangerous and exciting and chaotic and everything.
And you can use the Apollonian sort of but as long as you know how transparent and how that falls apart. Like you should probably, if you're in a relationship, sometimes you have to stop and figure things out about where you're at in a systematic way. It's like, okay, I should start doing this and not do that, and but that's sort of irrelevant to the whole thing,
right?
So yes, I think the problem you're describing is people who try to think life. They just think you think you can think life through your constructs, and you can't.
Right.
Like you just can't think life through constructs. That by doing that, you're first of all, it's an escape from the more fiery aspect of life into some kind of sterile, reification structure, and also it's brittle. It falls apart. It breaks. It can't be. You can't make it into anything that will sustain you. You're just building Tower of Babels, basically.
Yeah.
This is what the whole of integral system is. It's a big Tower of Babel, fundamentally. I wonder. I'm sorry. I hope I wouldn't offend Ken Wilber by saying that, but in the end, it's a Tower of Babel, even if it's a very interesting Tower of Babel.
Yeah, and it makes you unhappy because it's like because that specific, matrix of relationship, it says that you only can be happy if your partner is kind of on the same stage, or, it's like when all these kinds of intricate things come together and fit together. But life doesn't work like this. It's like the most interesting things I learned in relationships with people that were completely different.
Exactly.
Because I had to go out of my way, I had to transcend and go over myself to find, and to make it work. And it's like, it's such a easy way to make yourself unhappy by in using these kinds of models. Because your view on what your potential partner should be is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller the more you use the models. It's like, no, that's not, where's the love, So
not only the love, but whatever it is, it's not what it is. If the model is the map is not the territory,
right?
So your model models can be useful in times. Like you could be in a very confused relationship and not understand why, and we could you could talk to somebody and they could say, well, obviously you have different values than this person.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a problem. But the problem is if you try to think your way through the relationship in some kind of intellectual way, you might miss the gift that person is giving you completely, because it's something so other than you. and so alien and so different and so bizarre that you couldn't ever put it in the words. And if you did, you would just kill it.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry to, I just, Bach and the well-tempered piano, so
Mhm.
I like the term. And so what I'm always like to have a well-tempered setup, because these intricacies of, if you're just looking at psychology, the psychology has to be tempered by spirituality and philosophy, and the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like philosophy has to be tempered by psychology. Philosophy has to be tempered by philosophy, by psychology and spirituality, and so on and so forth. And so only as a whole, the whole thing becomes harmonic. If you just
Right.
look at the psychology of it, then it's just like, oh no, there are so many intricacies and dangers, and to get lost in these kind of things, like this Wilber system. It's like, no, it has to be tempered by a by a philosophical worldview approach, like what Nietzsche provided in a kind of sense, you know.
Mhm. Yeah,
Anyhow,
I mean, I agree that all the realms, like that's why the Sephiroth is like 10 realms of different attributes of the divine, because if you're in, the rule is that if you get stuck in one of the realms and you become unaware of all the other realms,
right?
then you're lost, then you're in hell.
Yeah.
You have to have you have to have a total view, a full view, not a total view, but a full view of from top to bottom and in between, completely vertical and completely lateral. And mhm.
Okay, so because yeah, I want to talk about another thing. So we have the courses, and we work kind of from this different angle with the courses and the series. But we want to do another thing, and this is like kind of the announcement. So we keep doing this parallax view,
Yes.
but what we want to do is to make it more like radio style show like, and invite listeners to come in within this hour and have, if they have a question to the topic or another topic. And so we will stream it on YouTube or Facebook, depending on which technology turns out to be the best. But but the idea is to be more interactive and to invite you guys who are listening to this in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
and I guess we have to figure out how we're going to structure that, whether we'll talk for a little bit and then have Q&A, or whether we'll just invite everybody for chats and questions and riff off people's ideas and thoughts. So it's adding another ingredient to the adding new ingredients to our big bouillabaisse stew.
yeah, exactly. And I think, no, it just like adds a little bit of chaos to it, because in my imagination, it's just like we're having these discussions and these talks like as we always do. But then
Yeah.
if there's somebody, we just let him in, and he can have a question, and then we do our thing, and
Mhm.
then and so it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so if that
Yeah,
doesn't
and
work, what?
that seems to be the I think the radio show is sort of an archetype, right?
Right?
In a way, and that's the way to do it. Is
Yeah.
this kind of conversation? I remember Camille Paglia saying she used to listen to really like sports shows, and it helped her with her writing,
Oh,
because
really?
the sports commentators were so lively and so passionate about their subject, and so expressive, um, that this helped. So this kind of talk show, radio show, is a very primordial form of expression.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Did you watch the football, Tom?
Actually, yesterday was the first game I
I
watched.
watched the whole game too. Actually, I don't usually watch football, but this year I got completely sucked into it.
Really?
I watched both games yesterday. They were both penalty shootouts. They were both like tense to the very end. And I was watching my mind doing this, and I was thinking about how how what your mind does during a football game,
Right.
and it's very analogous to sort of the different realms of emotionality, what we talk about,
Yeah.
and also the magic, right? So Messier, this one guy, I was watching the game and I thought, this guy has the magic of the whole team. And I noticed that when he was off, the whole team was off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, but when they were winning in the beginning, they seemed to have this magic to them, right? Like the whole team seemed to be flowing in this kind of a magical expression. And then when they lost it, the guy, remember the guy kicked the ball into the other team and there was almost a fight on the stage. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then in that moment, the whole energy of the game was off. And it was not clear who was winning or not. And we were in this kind of in-between Bardo state. And the
Yeah.
guy Messier, he was like, he wasn't there anymore. He was gone. He could see in his eyes were kind of like off. And then towards the end, they got their spirit, they got their mojo back just at the very end. And I've noticed that in several like games that I've watching, and so it's a very interesting thing to do. Like meditation is not something you just do when you're sitting on a cushion. You can do that, and you could feel the collective emotionality, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, where you're in this ecstatic state, right, of winning, right, in the flow, and then suddenly, then you're in this other state, which is sort of in between negative, and just you're feeling in your gut like, oh God, this is awful, you know.
Yeah.
So the football game is a microcosm. It's a good thing to meditate on, I think, in terms of what we're talking about in terms of magic and the different realms of emotionality, and even philosophy. Because one team has a game, one team has a sort of individual. I think like the Argentinian team, they're centered around this one powerful guy. They have good players, whereas the Netherlands team seemed to be kind of a collective. They seem to be more mechanical and collective in how they're playing, whereas the Argentina team seemed to be more chaotic and emotional and individualistic. I don't know if you had if you noticed that had any thoughts about that or.
Well, what I noticed is that football always is like the king's discipline of the philosophers. If they're really good, the philosophers, then they start to talk about football. I don't know if you noticed that. It's like Sloterdijk and Zizek. It's like really, because it's so interesting to look at that game and see all these different things that you're just describing, because it's so interesting. It's not just a game, it's just like, okay, so there are like 22 people fighting. I was thinking about that, contending with chaos, because like one different step, one different path would like create a whole different dynamic, right? And so like both teams are like, which team is the better one with dealing with chaos, right? And then all these different kinds of things come in, and I really love that, to look at it from a philosopher's point of view, right? And so it's like, and especially yesterday, that both teams that didn't like each other, and you could feel it. And Messi was like doing this, and it's like, "Que miras, bobo?" It's like, "What are you looking at, you fucking idiot?" And he was like really, really angry, and so somebody should
I thought that when they got into conflict with each other, that's when the game kind of interesting thing was. When they started to when the war kind of began, then the game was lost. Like the flow of the game was happening in the beginning. The Argentinas were winning, and this was a football game.
Yeah.
And then we went into this Bardo state of conflict where they're at war with each other, and even the people started pouring onto the chaos started to happen. Yeah, and I think there was even one guy in the game that rushed onto the stage like a protester, and the police came and they didn't show that in the video, but there was a moment where if you feel like the world is going to fall apart,
yeah,
and the rules and everything falls apart. So yes, there's this. It's this struggle between chaos and order. Also, It's profoundly emotional. The game, right? It's run by emotion. It's not just technique.
Right.
It's the collective emotion of the team that holds the whole thing together. And when the team is in this emotional flow, then they get the ball in the net. Whereas if they're sort of disconnected from each other, then no matter how good they are, they just can't get the ball in the net.
You know, there's a very interesting historical fact that there's a common ancestor between American football and European football, right? Although two different games and rugby, and so there is a
Mhm.
in the vicinity of Florence in Italy. There's still, every year they're doing this ritual because they're where the original form of kind of football has been played. And so it
Oh,
stems from the medieval ages. And so there's the city has like three parts and originally were run by three big families. And so they fight every year in this kind of ritual with each other in this kind of archaic way of doing football. And there are videos of this on YouTube. And so it's
mm.
like they can have the ball within the hands and they can kick it with the so it's a mixture, but they also can hit the people. So it's like it's also a fist fight. And
It's
so
war,
they
basically. It's a metaphor for war.
no, in this case, the original form was a form of war because that was a way of the families getting along with each other. And they were not just hitting the ball, well, they were like really fighting with each other and punching them. And so the goal was the same to put the ball into the net, but the way they were doing it was war, right? And so this is
Yeah.
like so interesting that these the heavy violence kind of was deleted from this game, but the emotions are still there, right? The this deep warlike
The
emotion.
emotional violence. Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's also sometimes a scapegoat, right? In the sense that the scapegoat is the guy that fucks up, does the worst possible thing,
yeah,
and then you feel this, like the guy who hits the goal post at the penalty shot, or
yeah,
he's in so much danger emotionally,
yeah,
um, that it's very. I mean, it's analogous to life, right? You're in danger when you have an important decision to make, or you have something to do, and if you fuck it up, everything is lost.
yeah,
So I think football kind of brings this intense, existential importance to everything you do, into a kind of a metaphor.
sure.
Or, um,
Yeah, but this is the reason why I said it's like it's a highest discipline for a philosopher to find a coherent new theory about football. Because it's so
mhm,
interesting.
mhm.
It's I don't know. There's something very enticing about it, about this stupid game.
Yeah, I guess it's the most like there's a different games. Like I'm from Canada, so we played hockey, and
Yeah,
it's more or less the same thing, whatever game it is. It could be football, hockey,
yeah,
baseball. There's just a subtle difference between them, or rugby. There's a subtle difference between all of them, but football is the most basic of all of them, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's the most simplified, pared down, basic thing. And so that's why I guess it's the world sport.
yeah,
It's the archetypal sport of and it's all about, so what is our life? We're struggling with otherness, right, which is the other team,
yeah.
and and we're looking for glory, and we're trying to hit the ball into the net. We're trying to achieve our goal.
There you go.
um so
Okay,
so
Andrew, let's
and there's the hunting metaphor as well, right? We're hunting for something, and we have to go through this adversarial, um realm to get to that kind of. Kill the animal would be just to sustain ourselves. Um, anyway, so yeah, so football. We could have done a whole session on football, I think.
let's bring it
I don't
home.
know why I
Let's
didn't thought of it. Maybe we can do that next time. We could
Yeah,
go
let's
deeper
bring it
into
home and
football.
talk about, bring it home in terms of Parallax. Because, okay, so just for the listeners, so we will do the live thing. You can chime in. We will provide you a Zoom link in some form. So if you want to have a question next Saturday, 11 o'clock, we do it for 1 hour. Then your course starting
Yeah, my
in
course will start in February. I don't have an exact date yet, but it will be I will be up in the next week.
right,
Please join me for that. It's going to
right.
be very interesting and fun and a real exploration, I believe.
That's great. Brendan Dempsey's course on meta-modern spirituality will start January 15th. And we are hoping that also Layman Pascal will do a third thing later in 2023. So we're working on that.
Yeah, I think layman's courses have been life-saving. People from the Parallax Sangha are often talking about how great layman's courses are and
Yeah,
how useful they are. Uh, Theoretically rigorous and interesting, but useful on a very practical human
yeah,
level in terms of meditation instruction and somatic instructions and body work
yeah.
and the sort of Gurdjieffian um, mode. So layman's incredible. Yeah.
Oh yeah, then you mentioned your Sangha, your work that you're doing every week, Wednesdays, no? That's going on and
Yeah,
that will
we have at the Parallax Sangha we have a men's group which is full right now, but hopefully I'll be able to start another one if more people want to join. The men's group is incredible. Then we have a group every just before this we have a contemplation group where we do some meditation and we read
that's Saturdays, no? At
a
8:30.
text Saturday mornings at starting at 8:30. We have a every 2 weeks we invite somebody. This time we're going to have I think John Vervaeke and I might even get Tammy Peterson,
Oh
who I
wow.
have a little correspondence with, said she might come. So we get people who are a little bit well known every 2 weeks, and then we have a private study group every week, and then did I mention everything? Yeah, that's what we have, and we also have a film club. So you could join the community, and people in the community really get to know each other and develop relationships and friendships and learn together and grow together, and it's been a really good experience. Um, so there's Parallax Sangha. You don't have to be Buddhist. I'm just using the word Sangha because it means kind of it's pointing to the sacredness of community.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's your realm in a sense. What I want to do is that, I want to continue doing like interviews outside of the liminal web. It's like I don't want to
Mm.
interview always, kind of the same people, but also like kind of see what's going on outside of this and to facilitate an exchange of ideas, and that this is like, in the best case scenario, we would finally earn some money and have some equipment so we can we talked about this, to go like at least once a month, to go somewhere and make an interview like in real life, not via Zoom. That would be amazing,
Yeah,
just like to have like some proper interviews. Even like for example, with people like Sloterdijk, who is like not really part of the liminal web, but has so much to offer. And I talked with his wife, and so he like a year ago, and so it's like he wouldn't do this via Zoom. I would have to go there. That would not be the problem. The problem is the equipment, which is always like kind of expensive, and so
yeah.
that would be something that I would strive towards, in the next years, that there will be enough money
Mm-hmm.
to do these kinds of interviews. Yeah,
And speaking of that, our first physical retreat coming up at the end of May,
right.
which will be happening in France with Parallax Sangha. So
Yeah,
I think we're pretty full at this. That group is full in the moment, but in the following years, we hope to have more and more physical meetups and retreats, and go on the road a bit and do our interviews on
yeah.
the road.
So there's a lot of
But we
going
could
on.
all obviously any kind of help and donations are useful in this department. We're working on that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of going on in Parallax at the moment, and so I think it's great. And
Time's going on. We have an amazing network of intelligent people in all different kinds of domains and so yes, indeed, it is going on.